Well, hi there. I wanted to show you guys some fishing knots that I commonly use. It may not be what you use or what other people use, but it's what I use. And also, I don't particularly know the name of all these knots. I just know how to tie them. So there is that too, and I do apologize if I don't know the name of the knot. So I may use terminology like putting two lines together or tying the hook on to the line. It's not very precise and it's not very exact, but you know, it works, eh? But anyway, a little bit of knot theory. Um, Anytime you tie a knot in a fishing line, or any line really for that matter, you create a weak point in the line. And what ends up happening is the knot will constrict on itself, kind of like pinch itself like a pair of pliers, and in turn, you create a weak point because it's constricting itself. And also, too, if you're using a more plasticky like line, for example, monofilament line is a pretty good example. It is subject to heat as well, friction. So if you're pulling on the line, so you tie your knot, you pull on the line, and it's not adequately lubricated or there's excess heat, you'll notice um, a little white patch of line above the knot, not even an eighth of an inch, 16th of an inch above the knot. And that is damage from heat, from friction. And it doesn't have to be there, it can be anywhere really in the line that there's friction, there's heat. And so when you're tying with a monofilament line in particular, but any kind of plasticky line, it will need to be lubricated when you're doing your knots. Otherwise, it'll work. It'll just won't be as strong as a lubricated knot, and you'll end up with more strength loss from friction. In my videos, I'm going to show you how to tie these knots using Mason line. It's brightly colored, you can see it fairly well. And I'll take my time when I do this with an oversized hook so that hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And like I said, I'll take my time in doing it. And then in the second half of the video, I'll add a segment of me tying it with monofilament line, just standard mono line. I think it's something like 15-pound test. So it's a little heavier. You might be able to see it. And you'll notice in most of these knots, in fact, I think all of them, I will be lubricating it if it's a monofilament line in order to tie it. As I have more time, I will add more videos of knot tying so that you guys can see it. But in general speaking, there's literally hundreds of different knots out there you can use in a fishing application or in that sort of outdoorsy sense, particularly in fishing. And realistically, for myself at least, there's only about a half a dozen of knots that I actually use on a regular basis. And the rest of them, for me, I find they all more or less function the same way. Some knots are a little stronger than others, so I guess there's different applications there. But in general speaking, if you need to attach a hook to a line, why do you need to memorize 20 knots for that? You really just need one or two. And I'm kind of like that. I don't memorize the names of the knots. To me, that's not important. To me, it's the practical application of using the functionality of that knot. Thanks for joining me. And as I have more time, I will post more of these knot tying videos.